Nia Mensa once had everything she could dream of, a beautiful home in Accra, cars in the driveway, and a husband who promised her the world. Every morning, she woke up wrapped in silk sheets, believing her love story would last forever. But forever ended in a cold courtroom when her husband, Kweku, stood beside his lawyer and destroyed her life with a single sentence: "I want a divorce." Before she could even breathe, she discovered that every house, every car, every account had been secretly transferred to his mistress's name. He left her with nothing, no money, no family, no place to go. That night, Nia walked the streets in her torn wedding dress, clutching a small duffel bag that held her last few belongings. The same people who once greeted her with smiles now turned away in pity or judgment. The rain poured down, washing away her makeup, her pride, and the last of her old life. She sat under a flickering streetlight, hungry, cold, and broken. For the first time, she realized how quickly love could turn into cruelty. As the thunder rolled across the city, she looked up at the dark sky and whispered, "This can't be my ending." In that moment, something changed inside her, a quiet fire, small but strong. She didn't know how or when, but deep down she made a silent promise to herself: she would rise again, no matter how far she had fallen. Days passed like shadows for Nia. Hunger became her closest companion, and humiliation her daily routine. She searched trash bins behind restaurants for leftovers, and sometimes slept beside old women under broken stalls. The same city that once bowed to her beauty now ignored her pain. People she had once helped crossed the street to avoid her. Her once manicured hands were now blistered and rough, and her soft voice trembled each time she begged for food. Every night, she curled up under a piece of cardboard, holding her small duffel bag like it still carried her dignity. Inside it were just her torn wedding dress, a photo of her mother, and a small comb, the last remains of the life she lost. One night, the sky broke open with heavy rain. Thunder roared, lightning flashed, and the streets flooded fast. Nia tried to stay dry, pressing herself against a wall, but the cold bit through her skin. Tears mixed with the rain as she whispered, "God, please, just one chance." She was too tired to hope, too broken to dream. Then, through the storm, a black SUV pulled up beside her. Its headlights cut through the rain like light from another world. The door opened, and a tall man in a black suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella. He looked completely out of place among the puddles and trash. His shoes were polished, his voice calm. "Are you Nia Mensa?" he asked. Nia froze. Nobody had spoken her full name in weeks. Her heart pounded as she nodded slowly, clutching her bag tighter. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a white envelope, sealed with gold. He handed it to her gently, almost with respect. "This is for you," he said. Nia frowned, confused and afraid. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man didn't answer. Instead, he said something that made her knees go weak. "You just inherited $50 million. For a second, everything around her disappeared, the noise of the rain, the cold, even her hunger. It was as if time had stopped. She blinked, thinking she misheard him. "What did you say?" she stammered. He repeated, $50 million, Miss Mensa. "It's all yours." Her breath caught in her throat. The ground felt unsteady beneath her. She tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter stamped with an unfamiliar family crest and a lawyer's card. The man continued, "You'll get the full explanation tomorrow. But tonight, you're safe. Come with me." Nia stared at him, still soaked, still in disbelief. Could this be a cruel joke? Or had her prayer finally been heard? She looked once more at the dark, cold street, the place that had swallowed her for weeks, and then at the warm car waiting before her. Slowly, she nodded. As she stepped into the SUV, the rain kept falling outside, washing away the dirt and despair of her past. For the first time in a long time, Nia let herself hope again. The world that had once broken her was about to watch her rise. Nia sat inside the warm car, still shivering from the rain, her fingers trembling as she held the golden envelope close. Everything felt unreal. The man in the suit sat across from her, silent and respectful, as if he already knew her life was about to change forever. The city lights blurred through the raindrops on the window, and all Nia could hear was her own heartbeat. She carefully broke the seal and pulled out a thick folded letter written on expensive paper. At the top was a name that made her pause, Nana Kwabena Osei. It sounded familiar, like something from a dream. Her mother used to whisper that name when she thought Nia was asleep. He was the man who had disowned her mother for marrying a poor teacher, a man who said love couldn't feed a family. Nia's mother had walked away from wealth and family name to follow her heart, and because of that, she had died poor but proud. Nia never imagined that man, her mother's father, had ever thought about her again. But here was his name, written in bold ink, calling her, my granddaughter. She began to read, her eyes scanning the elegant handwriting. If you are reading this, the letter said, then I am gone. I made mistakes that no amount of money can undo. I turned my back on your mother, and in doing so, I lost the only part of myself that was still human. You, Nia, are my chance to make it right. Let this wealth remind you that rejection doesn't erase blood. Tears spilled down her cheeks. The words felt like a hand reaching out from the past, from someone who had once shut his heart but somehow never stopped watching. Inside the envelope were documents listing his empire, luxury hotels across Ghana, cocoa farms that supplied the nation, and shipping lines that carried goods across the seas. And now, every single one of them belonged to her. She stared at the papers in disbelief. How could a woman who slept on sidewalks now own what people only saw in magazines? Her heart raced, torn between joy and sorrow. He knew about me, she whispered, her voice cracking. He never met me, but he knew. The lawyer explained softly that her grandfather had left everything to her alone. No cousins, no hidden conditions, no games. Just one wish, that she would use the inheritance to build something meaningful, something her mother would be proud of. As the car drove through the dark city streets toward a luxury hotel where she'd stay that night, Nia pressed the letter to her chest. The same city that once treated her like trash now glittered outside her window like a promise. She realized that her pain had not gone unseen. Someone long gone had seen her worth, and even in death, he had chosen to lift her back up. For the first time, Nia smiled through her tears and whispered, maybe this is my new beginning. Months passed, and Nia's name began to appear in headlines again, but this time not as a victim. The woman who once slept under bridges was now the owner of one of the largest business empires in Ghana. Her transformation was quiet but powerful. She didn't rush to show off her wealth, she studied, learned, and surrounded herself with trusted advisors. Every morning, she looked at herself in the mirror, remembering the woman who cried in the rain, and whispered, never again. When she finally decided to return to the public eye, the city buzzed with rumors. The same people who once laughed at her now whispered her name with curiosity and fear. Word spread that Nia Mensah was back, and richer than anyone could have imagined. Her first public appearance would be at Kweku's big business launch, the same man who once left her with nothing. The irony was too perfect to ignore. That night, the air was thick with perfume, pride, and gossip. Expensive cars lined the red carpet as photographers clicked non-stop. Then came a sudden hush. A long convoy of black luxury cars arrived, and from the lead vehicle stepped Nia. She wore a stunning red gown that hugged her figure like fire. Her hair glowed under the lights, and her calm, confident smile sent waves through the crowd. People stared, whispering in disbelief. The beggar ex-wife had returned, but this time, she walked like a queen. Kweku froze when he saw her. His mistress, now his business partner, tried to hide her shock behind a glass of champagne. Nia walked straight toward them, her heels clicking on the marble floor, every step echoing through the hall. The cameras followed her like magnets. When she finally stood in front of Kweku, she looked him dead in the eye, her voice soft but steady. You told me I'd die poor, she said, holding up a folder. She turned slightly toward the flashing cameras. But I own the building you're standing in. Gasps filled the room. Some people covered their mouths. Others pulled out their phones, already posting videos. Kweku's face turned pale as he took the papers from her trembling hand and read the company's name, his company, now registered under hers. The same business he had once stolen from her was legally hers again. The reporters went wild. Within minutes, #Niamensa started trending across Ghana. But Nia didn't gloat. She smiled politely, thanked the guests, and walked away with quiet grace. That was her real victory, not revenge, but reclaiming her power without losing her dignity. As she stepped back into her car, the city lights reflected in her eyes. The woman who had been thrown away had returned not to beg, but to reign. And that night, everyone finally understood, Niamensa was no longer a name to pity, but one to respect. After that unforgettable night, the whole country couldn't stop talking about Niamensa. News channels replayed her bold confrontation over and over, and social media crowned her, the woman who came back from nothing. But while everyone was busy gossiping, Nia was quietly planning her next move. She didn't want revenge, not the kind that screamed for attention. She wanted something deeper, something that would remind Kweku that no one destroys a woman like her and walks away untouched. She started by studying his empire. Kweku had built his name on borrowed money and pride. His new businesses looked successful on the outside but were crumbling inside. His ego had made him careless, and that was all the opening Nia needed. Through a web of secret investors and shell companies, she began buying his debts and struggling assets. Piece by piece, she took control without anyone realizing who was behind it. Within months, her hidden companies owned half of what Kweku thought belonged to him. Every deal was a quiet victory. She would smile to herself as she signed documents under a different name, imagining the day he'd finally find out. The sweetest part was how easily it all happened. The same lawyers who once betrayed her, the same accountants who hid Kweku's money during the divorce, were now unknowingly working for her. They followed orders from her secret management firm, never suspecting the woman giving directions behind the curtain was the one they had helped destroy. Then came the day she decided to reveal the truth. A major board meeting had been scheduled at Kweku's company headquarters, and all the top executives were present. The lawyers sat nervously, preparing financial reports. Kweku, confident as ever, was bragging about a new investor who had saved his failing empire. Without our new majority shareholder, he said proudly, this company wouldn't be standing today. The doors opened. Silence filled the room. He looked up, and his voice caught in his throat. Nia stepped in, dressed in an elegant black suit, her posture calm and commanding. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said with a polite smile. "I'm the new majority shareholder." Every head turned. The lawyers froze. Kweku's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like he'd seen a ghost. Nia walked to the front of the room, laid her bag on the table, and signed a few documents. "You may continue," she said softly, sliding the papers toward him. Her name, printed clearly beside the title Chief Executive Officer, left no room for doubt. The silence was deafening. Finally, she looked him in the eye and said, "I guess it's true, what goes around really does come around." She didn't shout, didn't gloat. She simply gathered her things and left the room. As she stepped outside, reporters waiting in the lobby tried to get her attention, but she only smiled. Nia had gotten her power back, and this time, no one could take it away. When the news of Nia's success spread across Ghana, it traveled faster than wildfire. Every radio station talked about her. Every blog had her face on the front page. The woman who had once begged for food was now one of the richest and most powerful women in the country. People who had once ignored her suddenly wanted to be her friend. But what surprised her most was how quickly her long-lost family appeared at her doorstep, the same people who had turned their backs on her when she needed them the most. Her mother's sister, Aunt Afua, was the first to show up. Years ago, when Nia had knocked on her door after Kweku kicked her out, Afua had slammed it in her face. She'd said, "You brought shame to this family. Don't come here again." Nia had walked away in tears, never forgetting that moment. Now, that same woman stood outside her mansion gate in designer clothes, crying loudly and calling her name. The guards were confused, but Nia told them to let her in. She wanted to hear what Afua had to say. Afua came in with trembling hands, pretending to wipe tears that weren't really there. "My dear niece," she began dramatically, "I have missed you so much. You know family is all we have in this world." Nia watched her silently, sipping her tea. Then Afua started talking about her problems. She owed money, her house was at risk, and she just needed a small favor, maybe a few 100,000 cedis, to settle her debts. She even tried to reach for Nia's hand, smiling sweetly. Nia didn't respond right away. She looked at the woman who had once humiliated her, who had let her sleep in the streets without a second thought. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm and low. "Do you remember the night I came to your house crying for help?" she asked. Afua froze, her fake smile fading. "You told me I didn't belong. You told me to go and face the life I chose." Afua stammered, "Nia, that was a mistake. I didn't mean." But Nia stopped her gently. "No, Auntie. You meant every word." She leaned forward, her eyes soft but steady. "You taught me the meaning of alone. And now," she paused, setting down her cup, "you'll learn the meaning of consequences." The room went quiet. Afua's eyes widened as Nia stood up. "I forgive you," Nia said simply, "but I won't save you." Then she turned to her assistant and said, "Please show her out." As the door closed behind her aunt, Nia walked to the window and looked out at the city that once watched her fall. She felt no anger, only peace. For the first time, she truly understood that power wasn't about money or revenge. It was about knowing you could destroy someone but choosing not to. And in that quiet strength, Nia found her freedom. After reclaiming her power and peace, Nia realized that her story wasn't just about wealth or revenge, it was about survival. She had walked through pain most people could never imagine, and she knew there were countless other women just like her, forgotten and broken by life. One night, as she stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights, she remembered the cold pavement she used to sleep on and the rain that had soaked her that night. Her heart ached for every woman who was still out there, begging for a chance to start over. That's when she made her decision, she would turn her pain into purpose. Nia used part of her inheritance to create something powerful, something that could outlive her. She founded the Phoenix Shelter, a safe home for divorced, abused, and abandoned women. It was a place where women could sleep in warm beds, learn new skills, and start fresh. She chose the name, Phoenix, because it represented her own story, rising from ashes to fly again. The first shelter opened in the same neighborhood where she had once lived on the streets. People couldn't believe it. The same alleys that once held her tears now rang with laughter, music, and the voices of women rebuilding their lives. Every day, Nia visited the shelter. She sat with the women, shared meals with them, and listened to their stories. Some were young mothers, others were older women who had been thrown away by their families. They saw her not as a distant billionaire, but as one of their own, someone who had lived their pain. "You don't need to be perfect to start again," she would tell them. "You just need to believe that you deserve better." Soon, her mission grew beyond one building. Nia began opening branches across the country. She donated millions to women's shelters, schools for underprivileged children, and food programs in rural areas. The media followed her everywhere, calling her the Angel of Accra. But Nia never sought attention. When reporters asked her why she cared so deeply, she always smiled and said the same thing, "Because I had nothing." And when you have nothing, you learn how to build everything. Her story inspired thousands. Women who once hid their faces in shame began to walk proudly again. Former victims became volunteers. Some even started small businesses funded by the Phoenix Foundation. The ripple effect was unstoppable. One afternoon, as she watched children play in the courtyard of the shelter, Nia felt tears in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of gratitude. She had turned every wound into wisdom, every loss into light. The girl who had once been forgotten had now built a home for others to be found. And as the sun set over the city, Nia smiled softly, realizing that true power wasn't in revenge or riches, it was in rebuilding others while you rebuilt yourself. One peaceful evening, Nia stood on her balcony, watching the sun melt into the ocean. The waves crashed softly below, and the golden light touched her face. Her life had become calm now, no more pain, no more running, just peace. As she sipped her tea, her assistant walked in and handed her a cream-colored envelope. It was from the same lawyer who had found her on the streets months ago. Curious, Nia opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter, old and slightly faded, with a familiar family crest at the top. The letter was from one of her late grandfather's closest friends. As she read, her hands began to tremble. He explained that her grandfather had been following her life for years through private reports and photos. He knew of her struggles, her marriage, her fall from wealth, and even the nights she slept under the rain. He had wanted to help earlier, but he waited. He wanted to see if she would give up or keep fighting. Your grandfather saw himself in you, the letter said. He chose you because you never gave up, even when life tried to break you. Nia felt her eyes fill with tears. She walked to the edge of the balcony, the sea breeze brushing her hair, and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." Her voice cracked, but her heart felt full. She finally understood that everything, the heartbreak, the hunger, the rain, had led her here. The woman once thrown away by love was now a symbol of power, grace, and rebirth. From the streets to the throne, Nia's story had come full circle, not as a tragedy, but as proof that no storm can destroy a woman who refuses to stop rising.